I, Paul Diffley, hereby call the Board of Education special meeting to order at 5:20 p.m. The quorum is established with all board members present. We'll do that later. Please note that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed for public viewing. We have a quorum present with all board members in attendance. I'd like to welcome the community in attendance this evening. As a reminder, governing board meetings are a business meeting of the board, held in public, and although public participation is encouraged, it is not the public's meeting. It is the duty of the board president and/or the clerk of the board to maintain an orderly, respectful, and peaceful meeting where all perspectives, voices, and opinions are welcome. Please refrain from speaking out while another person has the floor. At the appropriate time on the agenda, individuals wishing to provide public comment on items appearing on the agenda will be called upon, one at a time, to do so in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. The board cannot and will not respond to non-agendized items, but a staff member will reach out to you on matters that may need to be reviewed as appropriate. D1, the board met in closed session to discuss student discipline, conference with legal counsel regarding potential litigation and real property negotiators, and to discuss the performance evaluation of the district superintendent. No formal action was taken. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Pardue, would you lead us?
Place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
Item D3, approval of the agenda. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. D4, public comment. We've done that. E,
Wait, we need to do public comment regarding meeting items. Is there no public comment?
yeah,
I
we
have
do.
the cards
Sorry.
here.
Okay.
I was reading the wrong thing. Yes, all right. We've read the remarks.
So, I'll do the first
Okay.
two, since we-
Now, we have some who have given their time yielded over to another person, so I'll try to announce those as well. First speakers will be John Leonard, followed by Veronica Longworthy. John, are you here? Oh, okay, no hurry.
I also have two cards up there, one for the bond measure and one for the LCAP.
Okay.
So if I can address both of them at the same time,
Sorry.
and I'll need
Unless,
maybe,
unless that will confuse the. Okay,
yeah, I won't even need that. Actually, for the board, I have like 2 sentences I'd like to say about that, but my other comments will take 3 minutes if I talk fast.
okay.
So if you'll give me 15 seconds at the end of my comments, then you'll be done with me.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's get it. Let's go on here. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Regarding the LCAP and its goal of accountability, I feel that every reasonable consideration should be given to the selection of materials for use in classrooms. And Ms. Vandergrift, as a constituent, I'm requesting that you raise a motion to place on the agenda for the next meeting a proposal to revisit last meeting's approval of the 2 AP composition textbooks, the language of composition, and literature and composition. I feel, although clearly flawed, both of these books were approved for the sake of expediency. It was mentioned that there was a consideration to be given to the fact that the teachers needed time to get the books in hand, and now we know that these texts are all in inventory and can be delivered in a week's time. Surely there must be better choices amongst them. Procuring the best possible selection is vital, as these books will be in use for years to come, and hopefully the board will agree. Secondly, the LCAP speaks of a requirement to demonstrate increased or improved services for foster youth, English learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. And although no one should disagree that some students will have a physical or mental challenge, that need needs to be accommodated. Economical challenges and the expected flood of English learners into the district are created by bad state and federal policy, specifically open borders, sanctuary state status, and taxation policies. The state may provide the lion's share of the $26 million found in this proposal, but the cost of other less tangible resources like classroom size and personal attention is considerable. As an educational partner in the well-being of our district and all of its students, I am greatly concerned. We are so willing to throw around the allocation of these enormous sums, but in other areas we are not. Also at last meeting, the board made the decision to pass on the offer of pro bono legal services by the Advocates for Faith and Freedom law firm. All of the debate I witnessed centered on cost. I feel the board misplaced the focus in that regard. There can be no cost placed on the ability of parents to dictate all decisions made regarding their own children. And for that reason, I'm also going to ask my trustee to raise a motion to revisit that decision at the next board meeting as well. Perhaps a refocus on the true nature of the debate will bring greater clarity to the board and lead to a decision that the community demands. We are listening, and we want to know where each trustee stands on these imperative issues that confront us. And I thank you very much for your consideration of that. And in regard to the bond issue, I am very much in favor of increased security and maintaining the properties that we have now. And I also think it's important that we increase and maintain our labs at school and other accommodations for that. But I am in no way can I be in favor of any kind of new construction at all, or any expansion. We're living in very unique and difficult times, and every family's got to tighten their belt, and people do and have done so much more with so much less of the resources that we have, financial resources I'm talking about, so much less that they do great things. And I really think that we can do and make do with what we've got and not further burden people with a bond measure. We need to be reducing costs wherever we can, and not be so easily willing to increase them. And so that's how I stand on that. So thank you very much.
Following Veronica Longworthy will be Jose Carreno. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Veronica Langworthy, and I've served as a visiting committee member and a chair for accreditation with WASC. And so looking at this LCAP instructions, they say meaningful engagement of educational partners. The development process should result in an LCAP that reflects decisions made through meaningful engagement. So, and then engaging educational partners, LCAP also says school districts and county offices, school districts must at a minimum consult with teachers, principals, administrators, and other school personnel, local bargaining units, parents, and students in the development of the LCAP. And so what is the plan for tomorrow's LCAP post for public review? You know, is the notification, and then there's also a public hearing June 6th. If the goal is accessibility for engaging educational partners, how will all parents and other partners be notified? So this question also addresses an overarching accreditation issue for each of your high schools. There was area of growth or critical area for focus at Murrieta Mesa, October 2020. Self-study, the area of growth was conversations with parents and students revealed that they were not aware how they could participate in school governance. At Vista Murrieta High School in February of 2022, mid-cycle visit report, Growth Area 1, increased transparency, including and involving all key stakeholders in critical input and/or decision-making groups and/or committees. And then Murrieta Valley High School in February of 2021 is a critical area for focus is to increase parent participation. So again, what is the plan for LCAP, the post for public review? Do you have a proactive plan to engage parents as educational partners? What is that plan? Because it seems like a lot of your engagement with parents has been reactionary recently. It has not been proactive. And this is a ongoing issue for the district. And so would love to know what the plan is to engage parents, to give them access to the information. Because even just to find accreditation information, it's not posted consistently in all the school websites. You know, and looking for information, I go between the district one, they have a special one for the board, they have each school does it a little different. So it's very challenging to find where to locate information to stay informed as a stakeholder, as a partner, an educational partner. So thank you.
Thank you. Jose? Okay. Will be followed by Lewis Powell, who will be yielding time to Greg Longworthy. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Two of the three LCAP functions are, two of them, meaningful engagement of educational partners. I'm assuming families and taxpayers are also partners. The second, another one is accountability and compliance. I'm assuming some of that accountability is to parents and taxpayers. With these two LCAP functions in mind, I wonder how could three of you have approved the two AP Lit books when they have blatant racist content? You know, you can put red lipstick in a pretty pink bow on a pig, but guess what? It's still a pig. And even though some have addressed this pig in fancy, esoteric, educated jargon, it's still racist. Racism is racism is racism. These books are full of divisive, left-leaning political essays. But I want to focus on one essay. The essay is How Latinos Can Win the Culture War. I wonder if any of the three of you who have read the essay, the three of you that passed this, have you read the essay, at least that? If you didn't and you still voted to approve it, shame on you. You're a derelict of your duties. If you read it and you still voted for it, you have voted to expose our children to racist material and to spend my tax money on it as well. I did the math. Since '89, I've paid well over 80 grand in taxes, property taxes alone. The book explicitly says only dark-skinned Latinos, not light-skinned Latinos, can represent Latinos. Let's just pause for a minute and cogitate on these words. The essay author is asking or is judging by skin color. It's black and white. I don't know how else to explain that if you don't get this. Maybe I should have gone to college a little longer to be able to make myself understood. So it's asking us to judge by skin color, or is judging by skin color, and not by the ability or character traits such as integrity or honesty. Growing up in West Compton, I was repeatedly taught about Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. The part I have always remembered and used as my guiding light when it comes to recognizing racism is, I have a dream that my children will be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Nowhere in that speech did he make anyone's shade of skin color exempt from racism. Racism comes from all colors. If your racism compass needs adjustment, please read his speech to recalibrate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have Lewis Powell, who is yielding his time to Greg Longworthy. Who will be followed by Bob Cowell. Welcome.
Thank you. So, yeah, had a good conversation with Julie before. I had to kind of tailor my remarks to fit the LCAP, but the LCAP that I'm talking about is meaningful engagement with educational partners. One of the things, first, before I start, I found the staff and trustees to be open to meaningful engagement. So that's a good thing. I haven't had trouble talking with who I need to talk to and getting answers, responding. Talked to Jennifer just recently about the curriculum. That's meaningful engagement. Asked her questions. Of course, the topic now is the English curriculum, but I don't want to talk specifically about the curriculum, but the process of engaging the community to make decisions about the curriculum, because I think that really fits to the LCAP, because meaningful engagement is part of the criteria. So my criticism of the process would be that the process was not meaningful for this particular curriculum, because the decision really seemed to be made before the community got involved. And that is what I see as the problem. But I'll maybe give a couple of solutions to that as well. So here's the criticism. We came into the meeting, gave some engagement after getting access to the books. The books are long. If you've tried to read the books, you spend a lot of time reading those English books. You know, I doubt anybody here has read all of them. Pam Barrett read through, put sticky notes in there, and so I've gone through her sticky notes, and that was a big help to start to get through it, but I'm kind of still in the process. I've gotten through one and starting through the other. But that would be meaningful. You know, if I had time to read through and then give comments, that would be a whole lot more meaningful and helpful, I think, to everyone. And that's part of what I talked to Jennifer about. Also, the issue of the quickness, the speed to which that was approved was a concern. We had one meeting and then had the impression that, we had to get that approved or else teachers wouldn't get them in time. Well, we kind of find out probably the district was not given accurate information that you could get the book in 7 to 10 days. So that really was not a legitimate argument. But that would have helped. I think if you guys would have known that, maybe we could have slowed down the process, because you're spending a whole lot of money, millions of dollars, I think, on this textbook. And is it the best choice? Well, you want to make sure it is, because it's going to be in the school for 10 years, maybe that long. So that was my criticism of the process. Now, solutions. One of the things I told Jennifer, which I thought was very helpful, was Izzy said, teachers often give syllabuses to parents. Transparency is where you gain trust. Is if the teachers are transparent with the students and they're transparent with the parents, and that gains trust. And a syllabus at the beginning of the year, so parents will know exactly what in that book is going to be taught and maybe not going to be taught. That would have been helpful. And the other thing is not only transparency, but how about, and I talked to her about this, class visits. Why don't you come and sit in on my English class and see what's going on? Don't be suspicious of what we're teaching. Come in and see what we're teaching. And that's, as a former English teacher, that's what I always encourage parents. Parents, come in. Mr. Langworthy's not such a bad guy. Sit in on my class, see what you think, listen, and then you'll actually know the truth rather than maybe these rumors that kind of filter around. And that's how you deal with trust issues that show up. And Jennifer said, yeah, that's a possibility. There's really not a problem with that parents could come on campus as long as they get approved with the principal. So that's a part of a solution. And one more solution is in the process of textbook selection, maybe the trustees could appoint retired, older, I'm not that old, but older community members who maybe have experience in the discipline. You know, I would not be helpful at all with Spanish or mathematics. That'd be terrible. But English I could do because I'm an English teacher. I've done it for 20 years. I have experience. You don't necessarily go with what I say, but at least there's a common understanding, a debate that happens, input that happens, and that is meaningful engagement. So I'm just giving an example of what would be meaningful, what would gain trust, and slowing down the process, getting the community members involved at the beginning. And you guys as trustees, you kind of know who knows things, and you could select people from the community to be involved in that meaningful engagement, hitting the LCAP. So that's my understanding of the problem that I saw and some possible solutions. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, mine is on the bond issue. It is the bond project list. It was online. It's F7. The bond is $198 million. I request that for this bond, that we have the following, I have the following questions. Can we pay off the bond early without paying a penalty? How much money will we spend trying to convince the public that the bond is needed, such as this high-cost piece of literature? Can we have a finance meeting to find out where the present general fund money is coming from and where it is going? Can we do a complete audit of the school finances from an outside firm and make it public? Has that been done? A question. I request that the school district stop lying to the parents about what is being taught and then promoted in the classrooms. All politically driven teachers need to be removed from their jobs. Those who promote any racism against white people or promote sexual behavior in the classroom should be replaced by good teachers. Teachers' salaries should be reduced to match those of the private sector. All sexually explicit materials should be removed from all classes, even drama classes. All one-sided leftist propaganda books be removed from the curriculum and sent back to the publishers for a refund. All racist books like the AP Lit book be removed. Get us the current salaries of all employees. Right now, I can only find those up to year 2022. I want to make this a FOIA request tonight. Complete oversight of building contractors, especially any contractors affiliated with any member of the staff. How about giving us the cost of each item, and we can select which is the most important. What is the cost for each item, the project list? With a approximately $300 million current budget, I request that in the private sector, I request that, as in the private sector, personnel be evaluated and unnecessary personnel be eliminated. Private industry does it. We need to do it. Cut the fat and make the people work harder. In 2022, the district's total wages were $184 million plus $51 million in total retirement and health contributions. There were 3,768 employees in 2022. To all classrooms, be open to all educational partners of the district so we can see what is going on in the classroom. There should be no waiting period for parents to get into the classroom. We, the people, just need to know where the cash is going. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have, let's see, we have Catherine Amaro, who is yielding time to Jack and Guerrero, and Thomas Lashley, who is yielding time to Jack Guerrero, and Josefina Hartley, who is yielding time to Jack Guerrero, who will be followed by
Kelly Parsons.
Kelly Parsons. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Jack Guerrero. I'm a local resident and community activist. I'm also a certified public accountant and a banking professional with government sector experience. I am here today to speak in opposition to the contemplated $200 million bond issuance targeted for November's general election, and to raise significant concerns about the latest project list in today's agenda. Overall, I believe your analysis to date, the lack of clear accountability for project management and budgetary discipline, and the lack of detail in your project plan render the overall bond proposal premature at best and irresponsible at worst. Let me highlight 10 points for your consideration. First, this represents an incremental tax for residents at $26 for $100,000 of assessed value, or $11 million annually. The fact that this tax would replace the pre-existing tax from retiring debt under Measure D does not make this any less incremental. The deal with citizens on the retiring debt was that it was temporary in nature, that it would phase out in 2024, and that it was not permanent. Introducing a new bond at this juncture is the equivalent of credit card debt in your household when you're just about to pay it off after many years of hefty monthly payments, only to have your wife tell you that the credit card is maxed out again, while insisting that the monthly payments are still just the same. Sorry, but that is no consolation. Number two, I am concerned about debt burdens based on assessed property values, which means that newer homeowners like myself bear the greatest burden of these projects. By contrast, parcel tax measures are based on fixed costs per square foot of property, which would level the playing field more evenly, at least in theory. But even this tax represents a significant burden on residents during a time of record debt, bonds, taxes, mello-roos, and more fees from government agencies at all levels. Number three, your informational materials suggest that none of the bond proceeds can be used for pensions, salaries, and benefits. While this might be technically true as it relates to direct outlays from the projects, in reality, the bonds do subsidize salaries and benefits indirectly. You see, nothing precludes you from allocating general funds to construction projects, but because you have a growing share of salaries, benefits, and pensions, these essentially crowd out your ability to invest in projects from the general fund, forcing you to find alternative funding sources, including debt, to satiate your spending appetite today. Number four, there is significant economic uncertainty in the near term, including inflation, declining real income, and recessionary headwinds. U.S. consumer spending has held up year to date, that's the good news, but this trend has begun to wane. Retail sales growth is in retreat, and consumer confidence has fallen for several months. In the government sector, we also face a precarious outlook. If you follow the governor's budget proposal from May for the next fiscal year that begins July 1st, you will realize that it is 7% less than the current year's fiscal year expenditures, and $7 billion less than the governor's January estimate. And still, we have a $30 billion projected deficit, which is likely to get worse as the Legislative Analyst Office amends its projections. Based on the governor's latest promises to keep hands off most departmental budgets, the state is fast running out of options and getting squeezed into more taxes and greater fees. It is simply too premature for this school board at this juncture to impose greater debt and taxation on our residents before we even get a better handle on state and local budgets that will inevitably afflict our residents in the most unfavorable ways. Number five, debt is not free money. We are required to make significant interest payments during a high interest rate environment with no near-term remediation from the Federal Reserve Board. The cold reality is that issuing debt this year would cost millions of dollars in incremental interest payments versus waiting for a better environment. The general consensus is that interest rates should start to come down in 2025 with some stabilization, albeit at levels exceeding the pre-pandemic average. In other words, the cost of debt today is greater than the cost associated with the district's cumulative bonds. Number 6, there is no real accountability for these projects other than mandatory audit and citizen oversight committee. While these represent bare-bone expectations for the bond, they are not sufficient without any further authority or proverbial teeth. Financial statement audits are important, but they are not forensic examinations of fraud and abuse, nor are they objective assessments of wise and responsible budgets or returns on investment. Financial statement audits, necessary as they are, simply concern themselves with accuracy in reporting. You can have totally mismanaged budgets with profligate spending and negative returns on investment and still receive an unqualified, clean opinion for reporting information accurately. Yes, we want truthful and transparent accounting. That goes without saying. But we should insist on more than that. We should demand wise and responsible spending with high returns on investment. At minimum, we should demand airtight internal controls on the front end to mitigate any susceptibility of fraud, waste, or abuse. For example, public bidding on all contracts, budgetary milestones by project, by school, by chronology, and by function, with a clear trigger framework to curtail spending immediately in the event that we deviate from budgets in any material way. Our oversight committee should also have more authority than just rubber stamping the projects or registering their comments into the record. The oversight committee should have authority to hold project managers accountable, cut off spending in wasteful areas, or terminate contracts outright from poor performing vendors. Number 7, the project list in today's agenda is sloppy and woefully inadequate. The bulleted list is ripe with general and generic descriptions like, and I'm quoting directly from the exhibit, construct, modernize, replace, and renovate, and no specific delineation of projected expenditure or timelines or milestones by school or by function. No discernible breakout of what is essential and what is nice to have. The list also includes descriptions of what appear to be normal course recurring operating expenditures, like, and I'm going to quote, equipment, plumbing, furniture, hardware, software, paint, cameras, athletic equipment, landscaping, and something called other equipment, whatever that means. I'm afraid that these are examples of maintenance and normal operating expenses. As a general business rule, you should never incur one-time debt, even if it's funded over many years, to fund normal recurring operating expenses. Debt should be limited to infrastructural improvements or capital projects or one-time non-recurring expenditures. It is simply not responsible or sustainable proposition to leverage debt for normal expenses. Finally, the last bullet in the project list appears to be a catch-all, and I quote, all work necessary and incidental to specific projects above, end quote. First of all, nothing in the project list is specific, so that's a misnomer. And secondly, necessary and incidental expenditures could mean almost anything, a black hole. Number 8, I noticed you have a very impressive list of advisors from reputable organizations. That's all very nice, but please be aware that some of these for-profit advisors have economic interest and very real incentives to work with the school district to issue the bonds. One of these entities is an investment bank, which boasts on its website that it is the #2 underwriter of municipal bonds. Number 9, there is bond fatigue among voters and little appetite for more debt and greater taxation. Your survey of the voters is the equivalent of a push poll. Of course, people are going to say that they support quality education and may even be open to paying for it. But when we disclose other relevant factors like excessive interest payments, burdensome taxation, cost overruns, and limited accountability, voters will resist. And finally, number 10, we should earn the trust of parents before we impose greater burdens on their families. At minimum, this means coming through for them on parental rights and parental notification, evidencing for them test score improvement in core academic disciplines like mathematics, science, critical thinking, and reading comprehension. It means remediating the 57% failure rate of Murrieta students in mathematics. It means ending political, cultural, and sexual indoctrination of children. When we can evidence this moral obligation fulfilled for parents, then and only then can we ask for their support in other matters. For all of these reasons, I urge you to vote no on today's project list and to table indefinitely any discussion of bond measures for the November ballot. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Kelly Parsons, hooray, followed by Karen Poznansky.
Good evening, board. I'm also here to talk about the bond, but in a totally different way. I did some math, and as an English teacher, I have to tell you, I'm very proud of myself. It's not often that I get into the nitty-gritty, but I looked at the average house, the cost of the average house right now in Murrieta, and right now we have, it's pretty overwhelming. It's $688,000, which, based on this fabulous flyer that I got in my house, that breaks down to about $178.88 per year for a family that owns a home. That's about $700,000. And I did look at that and I thought, well, what's the average price of a Starbucks? And y'all, it's less than one Starbucks every week, and we can support schools. We can build amazing product for our students across the district. I'm going to speak personally because I am in a portable building over at Vista Murrieta, and I have been there. Next year will be my 20th year. It got solved, but we had a little bit of a rodent problem. It's because they bit through the bottom, and I could see the hole where they were coming through, so called, lickety-split, we got it fixed, but it's because my building's old. We need proper AC and HVAC. We know how important it is in the summertime to have those nice, cool classrooms to create opportunities for students to learn at their highest levels. I'm also, because of where I'm at Vista, we have a ton of new construction coming on Clinton Keith and Whitewood, and I can hear them beeping and groaning and breaking up all sorts of rocks and things that I don't understand. That's a CTE pathway for another person. I was an English girl. So when I am testing next week during finals, I know I'm going to hear the beep, beep, beep because I'm in a portable. My classroom is not sound conducive to this particular environment with so much construction going on. I urge you to let voters decide. We know how important that vote is and what an important part of our democracy it is. As someone who is married to an immigrant and the granddaughter of immigrants, we know that our democracy thrives when voters have their say. So I urge you to allow voters to have their say this November. Thank you so much.
And Karen will be followed by Jennifer Scharf. Welcome.
Thank you. Passing a bond measure for schools is an investment in the future of our community, ensuring that our children have access to safe, modern, and well-equipped learning environments. It not only supports educational excellence, but also strengthens property values and fosters a sense of pride and commitment to the well-being of our neighborhoods. It's about ensuring that every child, regardless of their background, has access to quality education in a safe and conducive environment. But this isn't just about students, it's about all of us, parents, educators, taxpayers, community members. It's about recognizing that when our schools thrive, our entire community prospers. This bond will authorize $198 million without raising current tax rates, maintaining a levy of $26 per $100,000 of assessed value. Importantly, if the state passes its bond, then our bond will be matched up to 50%. This bond will replace the existing Measure D, ensuring that taxes remain at their current rate. It's important to note that there will be no new taxes introduced. It simply extends the current tax structure already in place. Don't our students deserve essential repairs and upgrades to classrooms, science labs, career technology, and school facilities to enhance their achievement in math, science, technology, arts, engineering, and skilled trades? Don't we owe it to our community to maintain schools without deteriorating roofs, plumbing, and electrical system? And isn't it a top priority to improve the safety and security systems of our schools? This bond will make all of that possible. Please, let the voters decide what is best for the community, our schools, and our students. Let the voters have a say in building a legacy of excellence to keep our district the gem of the Valley. Thank you.
Just start.
And Robin Nielsen will follow Jennifer Sharp. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. First, regarding LCAP, these students, foster youth, non-English speakers, etc., will be in this community no matter what some community members may want. So what purpose does it serve not to educate them properly? And anyone who has ever been involved in LCAP knows that schools have to beg parents to get involved in these meetings. And apparently, I can just say the word LCAP and talk about anything I want tonight, including the sensible adoption of the AP textbooks. By the way, I just read all 12 pages of how Latinos can win the culture war, and it does not say that only dark-skinned Latinos should be represented. It does, however, say that colorism has historically shut darker-skinned and Black Latinos out of the media, and that should be rectified. But I'm actually going to stick to the rules and discuss an action item from tonight's special agenda. In the fall survey, parents shared concerns regarding the condition of MVUSD's facilities, concerns that I know teachers, admin, and the district share. In response to this parental concern, the district is asking the people to decide whether or not they believe Murrieta students deserve to learn in environments that set them up for success, whether their future includes the military, 2- or 4-year college, trade school, or the job market post-high school. As a veteran teacher of 24 years, I have worked at rundown, outdated facilities, as well as modern marvels of learning. And let me tell you, environment makes a difference. Modernized facilities provide access to 21st century technology, upgraded science labs and safe campuses, proper athletic equipment, and spaces where so much growing and learning takes place. This valley is growing, and MVUSD will have to expand to meet the community's needs, and this bond provides the means to do so. If you care about these students, this bond asks that you put your money where your mouth is. Incredibly, this bond measure does not increase taxes, but would instead maintain the current tax rate, a small ask to ensure that Murrieta remains one of the top-ranked districts in the state. I urge this board to truly partner with all parents and let the voters decide. Do not let the defund public education group hurt Murrieta students and their families. A no vote tramples on not only parental rights, but those of all of your constituents as well, while harming the future of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I am so disgusted by the bond initiative. I'm also disgusted by this. So deceptive. What a deceptive means to get public support. Would a school bond extension raise my tax rate? No, in capital letters. What a load of doo-doo. You know, I have been waiting for years for the last bond to be removed from my tax bill. Darren Daniel refused to educate my children when he was in charge of Vista Murrieta High School. He even lied on a court document to do so. I had to do the school district's job of educating my children, so this tax increase is especially painful. This is not chump change for me, and I will fight a new ballot measure with all my effort. I don't believe your statistics. Have any of you read the classic How to Lie with Statistics? I know you are a government organization and you operate like you have an endless supply of money, but this district is incredibly wasteful, and if necessary, you could have fixed these issues already. Time to budget like the rest of us.
Moving on to E, consent calendar. Consent calendar items are voted on collectively as a group. Upon board member request, items may be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the current calendar items, consent E1 through E3, as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries 5-0. F1, approval of the 2024/2025 school year Board of Education meeting schedule. This calls for a motion.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. F2, approval of personnel report. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah, I was curious about the personnel report.
Okay.
Dr. Andrews, could you help with this a little bit? Does this staffing plan stay the same pretty much year in and year out, just out of curiosity?
It stays relatively the same. It doesn't change a whole lot. Some of the challenges we're seeing adjustments will come, like as we have new students coming in, we may have to add some teachers based on the growth in the classroom, or say needs in special education because they come with additional needs possibly. But we're knowing that when we add staff, it's typically it's permanent. And so we're really cautious to add anything, especially something that would affect our general fund over time. When we do add staffing positions that are grant funded or come out of a special fund, we know we have that resource and so we're able to match that. But we're always very cautious about adding staff. Do you have a specific one, or is it a general statement? But in general, it's relatively the same unless there's some sort of program increase, like more teaching teachers or something.
And is this based on projections of student enrollment?
It is, and it's a delicate dance we go through because many of our teachers, because we go through this process, and I'm sure as a teacher, you know, some teachers are hired as temporary teachers. Later during the course year, they become permanent or probationary. That allows us, as if the numbers and the students materialize and we actually have them in class and enrolled, we can keep those positions. But on occasion, we've made reductions of temporary teachers because they're not needed. So
Have we been faced with a teacher shortage in our district? I know I've heard a lot of talk about that.
it depends on the position. Yes, in certain positions, what we call them hard to fill. So specific credentials, say chemistry or physics or a band director per se, those are hard to come by. Something different, like say a multi-subject elementary teacher, we get quite a few applicants. So it depends on the position.
And do we have a specific board policy that does not allow family members to teach at the same site? Because that issue has come up to me a number of times. And I'm just out of curiosity, is that a board policy? Is that a district policy? And would there be a reason we would not hire someone who is highly qualified, highly sought after, simply because a spouse or a mother per se is teaching at that same site?
So we do have a policy that pertains to that. It basically states that whenever practical, we don't hire them, but there is an exception process to go through.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. F3, presentation of local control and accountability plan. Mrs. Muchnick. Welcome, Muchnick. Jax, I'm sorry.
Take Muchnick, Jakes. It's all good. Thank you. Good evening, board members, and to the Murrieta community that might be listening in today. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to share with you our LCAP for the 2024-25 school year. As you know, this is an annual presentation, but this year I am presenting our new 3-year LCAP, which means that this plan goes through 2027. I know that. I made the connection that my son, who is a freshman in high school, will be graduating when we're doing a new LCAP. A little marker there. Board members, you have a copy of the LCAP that you can refer to. And as I move through the presentation, please feel free. I'm very flexible throughout. If you have questions that come up, we can address them during that time. And then I'll address at the end how this will be posted for the public as well. Okay. I do want to just review the background of the LCAP just to make sure everybody's on the same page. I'll read that first quote because it's just a good overview. The LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. The LCAP provides an opportunity for districts to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet their local needs. There are, as you see right below that quote, 3 main functions of the LCAP, and I can assure you that they apply well to the work that we've done in preparing this year's LCAP. You'll hear them kind of alluded to throughout my presentation. For one, this is a strategic planning process for the districts. Secondly, the development of the plan requires meaningful engagement of educational partners. That was brought up today, and we will discuss that in just a minute. And 3, the LCAP assures that there is a level of accountability and compliance as we meet our local needs. As you know, this plan goes to Riverside County Office of Ed, and they review it and make sure that it is meeting all expectations. That's more rigorous than you might guess, and we've done pretty well so far this year. I'll share that later too. As a reminder, the LCFF funding formula, which is funding that we are accounting for in the LCAP, is based on the district's student count for foster youth, English learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So it is our primary responsibility in the LCAP to demonstrate that we are continuing to provide quality services that are principally directed towards these student groups. They can benefit all students, but they have to have been principally directed towards those groups.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is that part of, I think we discussed at some point, part of our funding formula as well? We were discussing Hemet and Murrieta, similar size, different funding entirely. Is that part of the formula for our funding?
Yes, so it is based on the number of unduplicated students we have. So those districts that have a greater number of English learners or low socioeconomic are going to be funded at a greater rate.
And just for the public, unduplicated was exactly what you just
Those 3
described.
groups.
Those 3
Foster,
groups?
English learner, and low income. And unduplicated, the term is that if a student is in one of those groups, or is in more than one of those groups, you only count them once. They're unduplicated. So if you're an English learner and socio, you'll get counted twice. That's just where the term comes from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So board members, you do have a copy of the LCAP, and I'm going to just walk it through. I think that's helpful. It is a big document, but I do want to preface this by saying this document that you have in front of you is actually 2 plans because we have the update from the prior year, or the prior 3 years, and then the new one. So really, the new plan is about half of what you have in front of you when you look at it that way. Just good to know. I'm going to walk you through. So the first part of the plan includes what we refer to as the BOP. That's the Budget Overview for Parents. It's basically a 1-pager that provides the basic information about the overall budget. And then we have the annual updates. That's what I was just referring to. It takes us back to last year's LCAP and provides data for our metrics, as well as narratives that speak to the effectiveness of our actions and any discrepancies in implementation or expenditures. I want to highly recommend, like if you're like, where do I start with this thing? I would recommend the narratives in the annual update. And under each goal towards the end, after all the numbers and metrics and everything, you'll see narratives. There's like an overview of what we did with last year's and kind of how that went, and then any changes that are coming in the next one. And I feel like those are good overviews if you want to dig in, okay? The plan summary is the first part of our new LCAP. It provides general information about our district, as well as overview of reflections on our data, including both the successes that we've had as a district and some of our challenges. And then the engaging educational partners section looks closely at the ways in which the district gained feedback from our educational partners. And it describes specifically how the LCAP was influenced by that feedback. So I'm going to go back to that in a minute because I wanted to highlight that in our next slide. I'll speak a little bit about that in just a few minutes. All right, part 2 of the document is the real meat of our new LCAP. It includes the goals, and our LCAP has 4 goals. We continue to have the same 4 we have always had, and I will review them shortly. Each goal in the document has an explanation and a number of metrics that are aligned to it, the key actions that come to that goal, and then an analysis of how the goal was carried out the previous year. We won't have that this year because it's the first year, okay? So you'll see those are left blank. And then you'll see a tab for each goal, so it should be pretty easy for you to navigate that. And then part 3 includes a section called Increased or Improved Services. And this, Mr. Pardue, relates to what you were asking. As a district that does not get the additional concentration funds because of our students from those targeted groups, we have kind of like a higher level of justification that we have to provide because other districts, let me put it this way, that have a higher count of unduplicated can do services for all kids and they're meeting their unduplicated groups. Whereas we have a smaller group, and so we have a higher threshold of having to justify how these services provide support for those identified student groups. Does that make sense?
Yeah, would some of this explain why we still have teachers with rats and rodents and all these other issues where we don't have money because the state decided to fund other districts differently than our district, in part because of these formulas?
I'm not going to.
Well, we should, because I think that's what the community wants to
I didn't know
know.
if it was a rhetorical question.
We do get funded less, and this is a
you're right.
significant problem.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And just for this section, so you'll see this is another section that is beneficial. It kind of justifies what we did. We have to actually show research and the metrics of how we're going to monitor that. And so it's also a good section to review if you're interested. So following this, at the end of the plan are all our required action tables, and then we always include the instructions, and Ms. Lunn always asks us to put our glossary of terms. I don't think it's in the draft, but it will go in our final document. So that's a lot to go over. Thank you for being patient, but I just feel like it helps you understand the format and organization of the document.
Is the entire LCAP, is it on the district website?
It will be.
Okay.
I'll explain
I
that at the
understand
end.
it goes back a few years, like back to 2019.
Previous versions? I don't know that previous versions are.
They're
I think
not,
we leave
okay.
our current version on there.
Okay.
Good question.
Any other comments, board? Thank you.
I still have the rest of my presentation.
I was already going. Sorry.
It seemed like a pause, but actually, Ms. Vintner, are you sure?
No, go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So highlights. I did want to highlight a few things. For one is the educational partner engagement section. That is a key, as our speaker said, a key element of the process. So we did try some new processes this year. We revamped our PTSF, which is Partnership for Thriving Students and Families. It includes both our LCAP advisory and members of parent groups and administrators, classified teachers, and district personnel coming together to have these conversations. The other thing that I personally did is made a point to make appointments at site councils. And I didn't get to all of them, it got to about half, but it was a very significant experience for me to have conversations, and often they brought in some extra folks when they knew I was coming, but we talked about the LCAP, we also talked about their schools individually, and we're able to really understand what the needs of the students at their schools were. It was very beneficial. This section of the document shares concrete ways, like I said earlier, in which the LCAP was influenced by the input that we received. Our LCAP did not changed substantially. A lot of what you see in our LCAP, and I've shared this before, is tied to people. It's programs that have been in place a while, things that we feel have been effective and are ongoing. But when we spoke to our educational partners, we wanted them to validate for us that that was true, and we wanted to hear the specific stories that they're experiencing to help us understand why that was so or not. They also gave a lot of input into implementation. So just because we've kept an action doesn't mean that we're implementing it the same way we have in the past. And so a lot of what they've shared, this is another section. Please, please, please read the educational partner engagement, because you will see what specifically was shared that will now impact how we implement in the future, okay? One thing that you will also see in this plan is more streamlined data. One of the things that our partners shared is that it was a bit much in the past, so we streamlined it. Not as much, but really the essential pieces that need to be there. You will also see a reference to schools and student groups that were classified as red on the dashboard. That is a new requirement of the LCAP. We've been asked, we've been voluntold to put that everywhere. So when we, in the plan summary, you'll see us identify all of those groups or schools that are in red. And then when it comes to the actions, we will go back and explain this action will support those student groups that were identified in red from the beginning of the plan. I do want to point out also that the LCAP's very much connected to our annual goals that you all approved this year. Many of our actions are directly related, and a lot of the things that aren't are focusing in one way or another on some of our goals. So a very strong, healthy indicator of our systems working together. And then for some reminders.
Mrs. Muchnick?
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry. I would really like to highlight that. Anybody who's familiar with the Lighthouse Study, and I would encourage anyone just Google Lighthouse Study, and it's a study of how districts work and what are high-functioning districts. And high-functioning districts understand their goals. Their goals are aligned, so you don't have one group making goals over here and another group doing goals over here and a third group doing goals over here. Everybody understands what the goals are, and we all are part of consensus decision-making to come to those goals, and then we all work towards those goals. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I think it's important to see that they are very reflective of one another.
Again, the Lighthouse Study. It's a quick read, and it's very interesting.
Okay. We've already talked about that first reminder about the requirement for districts, and I did mention already that this is a new 3-year plan. I do want to point out that this is more than a static document that you're holding in your hand. The spirit of the LCAP is that we're engaged in this throughout the year. It is a robust process of continuous improvement, and it has definitely been the case this year. I've been so appreciative of the feedback and the people that we've talked to. They've really helped us adjust and fine-tune the actions that we have in place. So next, we're going to dive into each goal. I'm just going to give you a high-level view, and then again, please let me know if you have questions as we review them. Our first goal is student learning achievement. It really is the core of what we do as a district. These include actions to support staffing for smaller class sizes, K-3, counseling supports at all levels, coordinators who oversee data, curriculum, standards implementation, and instructional technology, and PLT leads who help facilitate the work of PLTs. The goal also supports our AVID program, our CTE offerings, and general efforts to ensure students are college and career ready. This year, we did add the PLT lead stipends to the LCAP under this goal. That's new. And as you know, we also have a lot planned under CTE and college career readiness. One of the things that we're looking to in our engagement with parents really validated this is the idea of CTE wheels at the middle school that would potentially provide exposure to those things at an earlier age so that children could make decisions as they move into high school and already have an idea of what those things are. Goal 2 is intervention. It looks at ways to close achievement gap for unduplicated students. So our key actions in this goal include elementary intervention teachers, additional sections at secondary schools to implement intervention or credit recovery. It also includes programs and supports for English learners as well as long-term English learners, and several programs that are used for intervention in our district, such as Read 180. I want to point out, as you know, we talked about this before, English learners being one of those target groups, it's very important that we have an isolated action specifically for them. And this year, we were asked, part of a requirement by the state was to have a separate action specifically for long-term English learners. That is a group that they have identified that, you know, kids get stuck and they can't get tested out. And so really putting focused efforts to supporting students being reclassified. We've also adjusted some of our intervention programs. We are changing from Imagine Math and Reading Inventory to programs called Renaissance Star and Freckle. STAR provides us with diagnostic information for our students in the secondary levels, and Freckle is a computer-based program that supports students where they are, helping fill in their academic gaps, similarly to iReady at the elementary.
And I'm not sure what the numbers are or if we keep track of it, but brand new immigrants who come in with limited English, we don't know who they are. I get an 11th grade student comes in, beginning of the year, 0 English.
Yeah.
What supports, when we're talking about interventions, does our district provide, and how do we differentiate? I mean, we're going to get a test score, they're going to get tested, but we really haven't been working with them. Is that reflected? Is there some other way in which we do that? And how do we support them if they're sitting, let's say, in a U.S. history class?
Yeah, I hear you. I think we're growing in that area. When you read the narratives in the LCAP, the 2 areas are long-term English learners and newcomers is what how we refer to it. So we have purchased additional materials or like resources at elementary to support students, both computer-based programs and actual things that teachers can use with students that come in with no language. And there are some at the secondary as well that our teachers that support English learners can use to differentiate for those students. Is it an area we continue to need to grow in? Yes. Yeah, it's one of the hardest groups to try to figure out how to support, especially at secondary when they're moving from class to class.
Is there a challenge giving them material in Spanish? Is that a law? Just clarify for me if they had extra material that's actually in Spanish, so they have access to the material.
That's
so
fine.
they kind of know what's going on as they're developing their English skills.
And the other thing that we've done, and this has been at all levels, but I know for sure that I've gotten feedback at the secondary level, is iPads for students at those levels so that they have an ability to translate right then and there with their teachers, and that's been very beneficial for those students. We do have bilingual aids, mostly Spanish though. We don't always have newcomers that speak Spanish, but that's been helpful at the secondary, and they will actually push in with kids to help support them in classes.
We did have a set of textbooks at one point that had Spanish that was embedded with, there was material that came with new textbooks. Did our recent purchase include any Spanish support materials for the teachers?
I can find out for you. Yeah.
That would be good to know.
Yeah. The ones that we just recently adopted?
Right.
Yeah, will do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're getting there. Goal 3 is professional development. This is just that continuous learning for all, particularly for our staff who work directly with students. So under this goal, we have instructional coaches. We have our induction program, which provides new teachers with support, training, and mentoring. This goal also helps us fund curriculum work teams and our data and assessment programs, both of which are vital to the district's focus on PLCs. They essentially provide the infrastructure and data that are needed for them to function effectively. As we head into next year, and this is a good example of that feedback and alignment with our goals, our instructional coaches at the elementary level will really be focusing on math and really helping with the math adoption and professional development in that area, which is one of our goals for our school board. Additionally, our work teams are going to be including special education essential teachers so that we're not just developing these systems in the general ed class, but also in the special ed programs. And finally, we are adopting a new program, EduClimber, that will support our staff's ability to look at data at a course level, grade level, or individual student level. We're very excited about this and hope we can share more about that in the coming year as we get our hands in there and get to use it.
I have one more question.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I probably have 3 or 4.
Okay.
New teachers, and you were mentioning that, and it got slammed. And I know it's a spring, and so we get a lot of discipline issues just generally, and that takes away from instructional time. When we talk about trying to support teachers in the classroom, especially new teachers who are struggling with classroom management issues, is that included? Because there's one thing I am sure of, enough disruptions in the classroom means less instructional time for the students in that class. And so if we have interventions for students of all these other things, behavioral issues, and we've talked about this a little bit, especially in the junior high, trying to make sure that we manage those behaviors to make sure those students can focus on what needs to be taught. Is that included in any of the LCAP as we talked about? I think the prior one was talking about interventions.
Well,
I know
the
it wasn't
fourth goal-
behavior.
Fourth goal will hit on behavior.
We'll hit on that?
It will. And then in terms of the induction program, there is a strand of instruction that they provide to our new teachers having to do with behavior management, engaging students, those types of strategies. And then to me, though, the most organic or, kind of like authentic piece of it is the mentors that they're set up with. And so they're able to get help in real time when they have an issue and they need support with that. They can go in and observe other classes with that teacher too, if that would be helpful. Sometimes that seeing how another teacher manages a classroom can be helpful. So there's supports in that way.
Yeah, I have experience with that because I am an induction coach with the County Office of Education, and I can verify that induction coaches work a lot on classroom management.
Yes.
That is because our biggest duty is what they call just-in-time support.
Yeah.
But they, those cycles of inquiry they have to go through, they can go through and work on classroom management.
Yeah,
So
it
that's
tends
part of
to
our
be.
job.
It does tend to be something that a lot of our new teachers. I don't know, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
To learn those skills. All right, goal 4 is around engagement in school culture. So it encompasses a number of actions that contribute to supporting our students and families. Actions in goal 4 include equitable and inclusive practices and educational partner engagement, including our student and parent advisory councils. Also includes mental health supports, our efforts to address behavior by developing multi-tiered systems of support at our sites, and our services toward foster youth. Similar to English learners, our targeted support of foster youth is important because it aligns with the purpose of our funding, as well has been identified as a need by our data. Finally, this goal encompasses actions that address attendance, including transportation services. This year, a couple changes in this goal. We added the word inclusive, when equitable and inclusive practices, just to better represent that work. It highlights a focus area of our district, and members of our special ed parent advisory committee were very supportive of us bringing that in as well. We have also added efforts to develop a family center next door to the district, and we are setting aside funds as part of the LCAP for a position to be there to run it and to be available when parents come in. And we are piloting parent liaisons at 4 schools. As part of our MTSS supports, we're expanding a model that we piloted this year of a trained aide who is available to support high-level behaviors at the elementary level. That has been successful. And finally, a last minor change, instead of having a separate action for transportation, we pushed that into the attendance supports because that's its primary role.
Could I ask what equitable and inclusive, besides looking nice, what it was the point? What were they trying to accomplish? What were the concerns that we should grab onto that prompted that?
What are the concerns?
Well, has our district had problems being equitable with our students? Is there something in our practices that we've been doing wrong? I'm just curious if that's a history.
Just to grow in this area. I mean, when we always talk about the reason.
Could you give me a concrete example of where we would want to grow in this particular field that our district hasn't been doing so well?
Well, I'll give you the example with inclusive. So as part of what we're so proud of is like the unified sports and the activities that bring our kids into regular opportunities for participating in our school's activities. Sometimes that happens at different levels in the classroom. And so thinking about what does that look like for students who are in a general education classroom, and are we able to provide them the support they need within that environment? But I mean, those are just 2 pieces. I mean, I think it can cover a lot of things. And a big part of that practice, I mean, there isn't, the piece of that is really about continued education in that area and reflection, and that, we can always get better in this area, and thinking about how we can create those types of environments. Thank you. Okay. Next steps. So here we are. On May 8th, we submitted our draft plan to the county to review as part of what they call a fast pass process. We actually received their feedback. I have sat in meetings where they sat with us for about an hour to give us all our feedback, and I'm glad to say mine was only about 15 minutes, so pretty good. We're pretty close. What you've got in front of you is pretty close to the final copy. We had intended for the plan to be posted tomorrow for public review. It might be sometime next week because we need to take back their suggestions and make sure that it's reflective in there, and then we will post it sometime next week. The official public hearing will take place on June 6th, the same evening that we have a public hearing for the district's overall budget, and then on June 13th, the board will have an agenda item to officially approve the plan. I just want to say as I end that, I've seen LCAPs over the years. The thing that makes me proud and excited about our LCAP right now is that it is very authentic. It reflects a lot of the key initiatives that we are taking part in. It is focused on supporting our unduplicated students in very meaningful ways. So, of course, we are always open for further feedback, both from our public and from our board. And if you have any questions or suggestions at this time, I'm more than glad to take them.
Questions?
Yeah. So I recently went to a CSBA training on equity in the budget, and they told us that the LCAP and the budget are the primary ways that the district is accountable to the community. And so I'm just wondering with the, since this was an agendized item and people have brought up their concerns with the textbook adoption, and apparently it sounds like there was possibly an erroneous timetable for how long it would take the textbooks to be delivered. And I think that people feel like even though technically speaking, they were given an opportunity to, look at the books and comment on the books. And as the newspaper headline said in the Press Enterprise, it said that the board approved textbooks over parents' objections. And so I'm just kind of wondering, since we aren't apparently on such a tight timeline, is there anything we can do to, and then also I would like to point out that our student representative mentioned that she has not only passed at least one of those classes, maybe both, passed the test, and that they didn't even use any books. I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can, kind of pause and I know that our English teacher in here said that, where he teaches, they select materials. You don't have to have a big book, and I believe the College Board website itself has all the like the main elements that they're trying that the tests for, like writing about setting and character and all that kind of stuff. That I'm just wondering, in light of this is the vehicle for accountability to the community, and they came out with, very, I would say, thorough sorts of assessments of what they saw in those books. Is there anything that we can do as a district to address what what happened?
Let me try to answer the question. Reviewing so the LCAP is about the fund that's there, the $26 million or $24 million that's there, $26 million for those services there. The textbooks were purchased out of a different fund. It was Proposition 20 lottery funds. And so these are separate things we're talking about. The specificity about the books, I do know that the process for the purchase order, because the board took the action and it was approved on a 3-2 vote. And so as a district, we took those 3 votes that said yes and acted accordingly and went through the process of the books. I don't know if we've received them yet or where we are in the process of that shipping and so forth, but we followed through with the collective will the 3 votes said to proceed. So we've done that. This might be, actually, I'm going to ask Mr. Pearl to just follow my thinking here and help me with a process question. If the board wants to reconsider that, they would need to probably have that on an agenda, and I don't know who would make that for a future agenda item to reconsider the adoption of a book. And I don't know which members of those 3 or how that would work to have that agendized for a reconsideration.
I think this is answered really by your bylaws, as far as any board member has the right to have something added to the agenda. as far as requesting it, and then it's incumbent upon the board president and the superintendent to figure out how that suggestion is appropriately handled.
Okay.
Whether it can be reconsidered, whether it belongs on the action agenda, the information is just an information or discussion item, that would go to you and President Diffley.
Okay, thank you.
But, and also just to specify, I think it's 9322 of your bylaws, and I think it requires a written request to go to the president or the superintendent.
What is clear is that the books aren't in those classrooms yet, right? Even if we've ordered them and they're being shipped and they're going to arrive and they're in the warehouse at some point in time, it doesn't mean they've been distributed into classrooms. All it means is that 3 trustees voted to adopt them. And so we've followed that process. And until there's different direction, that's what we have to do.
I just was going to jump in here for a minute. This time around, we did not, I know with the history books, when we were choosing which books to adopt, there were 2. There was one and an alternative. And I wasn't sure if the parents had the option of looking at all the alternatives. Because I know as a teacher, we usually are shown a number of different publishers and which books. And then I'm assuming the book that we had that was this book was a preference. Is it normal practice to only have one? Because that was one thing I was asked quite a bit. And my response was, I did not see an alternative. But was there an alternative for that AP?
I think there were for some, for that specific
I
one.
think it was the
I can't
AP
answer that.
language
Miss-
book was a.
Jennifer, if you want to respond to that, just as a point, the agenda topic is LCAP, and now we're off onto text. I know. So but I do agree we need to answer the questions.
Well, this is an LCAP issue, the educational partner engagement and how that went in light of this adoption.
So we included all of the choices for textbooks with the parents and the teachers, since we had the parents on the committee. And so the parents and the teachers reviewed the textbooks, and they came to the consensus as a group that this was the one book that they were choosing. And so that's the one we put out for view and to represent to the board for selection.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-up. Quite a few questions about how the numbers of people who responded, and then we shrunk it down to who got to choose on the parent side. I think that was part of the process issue. To feel as if they had a say, I got the sense that there were people who felt like it was handpicked and sort of a rigged deck.
Okay, I can explain too, but you jump in. I really feel like we made every intention to not make it rigged. And I watched as we actually used one of those little wheels you can turn to do like a random folks. I know that sounds silly, but like you do in a classroom. We recorded it if you'd like to see.
No.
But also, I guess I want to say what makes this one unique is that these are smaller groups of teachers than like when we do the math adoption, for all of elementary, you've got a large number of teachers across the district that are representing each school. So you can bring in more parents, and it's an equal number of parents, teachers, and staff, staff and parents. When you only have 2 teachers that are teaching the subject, or 2 or 3, one for each school, it's a very different process. And so I think that that's part of what made it feel like, so you had 60 folks express interest and there were only 3, but there were only 3 teachers as well.
I went the wrong way. No, I was just trying to make sure that if we had a lineup of books, at what point were the books narrowed down? So in other words, let's say we had 2,000 people out, and I'm throwing numbers out, I don't really know. 2,000 people were interested in being in the process. Would all 2,000 of those people be able to see multiple books, or were they only allowed to see the one we finally chose?
There weren't a lot of options because of the nature of the text, of the content areas. And so what we did is we brought in, there was a handful, 3 to 5 for each of the, depending on world language. When it came to ASL, I think we only had 2 choices. I think for French, there was even a point in which there was only 1 choice with a book. So it was very limited because of the content and what we were looking at. So we brought in all of the options that we had. We had at least 2. I think with the AP books, there was 3 or 4. They were multiple, some of them were multiple from the same publisher that offered it, and it was set up a little different. We brought them all in and let them choose.
But it was just those that sat in on the meetings. It wasn't anybody who wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is probably something we should look at again. in the future is just in the sense of transparency. You know, we're spinning a wheel, oh, these two get to see all the things, but then lo and behold, we come out with one. I think it would be wise to have at least two, the top two, and make sure people can see them, I think, so that we know ahead of time and aren't making those decisions at the end.
Well, I'm kind of curious because I think you said there were 4 books initially. And so I know if you look at the College Board website for that, it appeared, unless I, missed something, it appeared that districts or schools can submit books for their approval for suitability for passing the exam for the students. But they also said there was no, unless I'm incorrect, it sounded like you can literally pick any book, and if you want them to approve it, they will try to do it in the time that they have. But it sounds like there's an infinite number of books, so we're not really limited to a small list of 4, it didn't sound like, from what I read.
We basically go off of what the recommendation is because the whole goal for this class is for these kids to pass the exam to get the college credit. I mean, that's truly our goal. So if we look at a textbook that we know is College Board is recommending, or we've heard from here, this is a valid textbook where kids are successful in the course, that's usually where we flock to. We didn't go off and try to pick our own.
Well, the College Board website had quite a few more than 4, I'm pretty sure.
Unsure with all of the details. I could go back and find out.
I was going to say, it's hard because we're not prepared for
Yeah, okay, I understand. Well, okay, so that aside, the thing that I want to say is I wonder, it seems like people are concerned that the board was pressured to hurry up because of the timetable had been presented such that we were in a big hurry, and then apparently we're not. And so is that really the will of the board? I mean, how much was the vote?
Well, I guess I can't make that decision. I mean, if you feel that that warrants a conversation with the board, I'm open. I apologize if my comment did that. I've been involved in multiple adoptions, and it really is always that, the sooner, this is about it. Like we plan it out, and then like in May we want to order so that we get them. One thing I did not consider, and I will take a responsibility, is these are smaller adoptions, and so the timelines may have been different. I was just making sure, and I hope that wasn't the one thing that made everybody make a decision. It was that I wanted to make sure we didn't hold it off and then run into that situation, and we've had this happen where books are not in teachers' hands in time. And it really, and especially for an AP class, that can be very detrimental because you want your teachers to be able to get started with what they want to present at that time. So I was honestly coming from a good place just to try to provide that information.
Sorry, if I can add to that too. There's also a process once we receive the books, because we have to receive them, they have to be barcoded, they have to be distributed. And then now with online access, that has hit a whole nother level, because now we have to make sure our IT department can take care of all of the uploading, working with each of the publishers. We've hit lots of snags over the years because some publishers integrate into Canvas, some don't, and how to handle all of that. So it's not just the delivery of the books, there really is an intensive process in which we go through. So absolutely everything that she said.
As someone who's taught AP and my wife teaches AP, I just want to be clear. If you're really rigorous, you would have some summer reading as well, and it may or may not come from the text. And so one of the things that I try to make clear to the public is just not everything in the textbook is necessarily used for the course. And so that's why some of this, and you can bring in outside material. That's always like when you're doing that. So it's just important, and that's part of why, I did vote for the textbooks, and I do know the teachers need their materials to get started. So I appreciate the work you guys did. I think we could work a little bit better on the process for sure.
Yeah. And I've experienced that multiple times with textbooks, even though we felt like we got the process done early enough in the school year to be able to get them on time. More often than not, we do not have our textbooks when the school year starts. It can take weeks.
I've been there too.
Yeah, almost every time. So yeah, I just
we do pretty well actually.
I teach AP, but AP, non-AP.
Right.
It's like weeks sometimes. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. The one thing I wonder though, in the process, because we did adopt a new adoption process, I guess it was in January, and at the time, I believe there were things that were presented to be considered for the policy that were not included at all in any way, shape, or form in the agendized item. And at the time when it was passed, I remember asking, so where's the accountability? And I was told, we are the accountability. So now we've had this process where the books were out on the table. There were, I think there was like about 2 hours of public comment about them. And so I'm just asking, as far as engagement, what is the response to this? It seems like, we kind of missed it again, and now we got these books for what, 8 to 20 years, and the public is not happy with that.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And I think we did try to do some things to improve that, and by bringing parents in to be part of the process from the beginning.
Well, parents, but I'm just saying that, educational partners.
Yeah,
community.
I understand.
So, yeah.
I do think we can, there's some small things we can continue to do, and maybe that's something we can talk about as we enter into the math adoption for next year with elementary.
I want to thank you, especially for the bit about the induction.
Oh, yeah.
That is, for me, it's a very, very interesting and important part of our process, and quite useful for the teachers.
Yeah.
When I started teaching, I got nothing.
Right.
A set of keys. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Point me in the right direction. But I've gone into the induction area a couple of times, 3 times maybe, and I'm very impressed with it. And I think that is one of the things that helps our teachers be far better hitting the ground running than a normal school, and gives, just more incentive to the kids to do well. So
Yeah.
I'm thankful you do it.
Thank you.
No more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big job. Moving on to F4, student discipline. Expulsion case number 2023-2024-133.
I make an emotion to expel, do I say the student number?
Just start with, I believe you start with wherefore.
Wherefore, okay, I make a motion. Wherefore, the Board of, the Board of Education of the Murrieta Valley Unified School District, under California Education Code Section 48915B, hereby expels student referenced in case number 2023-2024-133 from all schools in the district based on Board Policy 5144.1 for the violation of California Ed Code Section 48900. A1, caused, attempted to cause, threatened to cause physical injury to another person, and A2, willfully used violence on the person of another, except in self-defense. The term of the expulsion will be for the remainder of the second semester of the 2023-2024 school year and the first semester of the 2024-2025 school year. This order is effective immediately.
I second the motion. Any comments? Yes. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. F5 is fun. It's approval of a fireworks show at Murrieta Mesa and Vista Murrieta homecoming football games. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. It's a great way to celebrate. We are going to, let's see. Thank you.
Approval of new high school course outlines.
It wasn't on here.
It's on, it
Thank
should be
you.
on our last page.
Approval of new, pardon me, approval of new high school course outlines. This is for Education 2, Introduction for Teaching, Accelerated Biology, and Air Force Junior ROTC Aviation Honors Ground School, the new course. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah, I'm actually, I know how hard it is for new teachers. So I think that kids that get exposed to it in high school, because I saw some of the stuff they're doing with them is similar to what you do as a student teacher and in induction. I just think it would make the adjustment that much easier. So, and I'm just curious about the advanced biology. So I know it's not AP. Where do the kids who take advanced biology, what would be their next course?
Actually, I think Jennifer, you'd come and respond to that. The next course in the sequence would be chemistry, if I'm not mistaken. So they may actually go to an honors chemistry if they're an advanced type student. Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. So chemistry would be the next ring.
I'm just, yeah.
And there's
just
different
curious.
levels, and so
Yeah.
whichever one that applies for them and how they feel, it opens up many different doors.
Yeah.
The goal with these courses is that we get more kids into AP
Mhm.
science courses eventually.
That's what I was wondering. Do they go from advanced biology into AP biology?
They
Or
could if they chose, but usually the
They do can.
sequencing is a little bit different. They usually
Okay.
say push that off, but that would be up to the site's decision.
Okay.
I have a quick question while you're still there. I would assume that Air Force Junior ROTC Aviation Honors Ground School is at one site.
Yes, that's
Is
at
what Air
Vista,
Force.
Vista Murrieta.
And would the Education 2 Accelerated Biology also be one site, or is that at multiple sites?
For this year, it's a pilot, and so it's going to be offered at one site for this next year, and then we're going to evaluate it and see.
Is that for
where it can
both,
go.
or just for the Accelerated
Just
Biology?
for the accelerated bio.
So Education 2 Introduction to Teaching is,
That's currently at Vista because it's the second level course for the education pathway, but that pathway is growing to Mesa next year. So they'll have the first course, and then eventually that will be at Mesa. And I believe the hope is that that happens at all three sites to have a CTE education pathway.
Gee, that's positive.
don't some of these schools already have accelerated biology? And additionally, is the Education 2 Introduction to Teaching limited to one site because of the teacher's interest, or is it, why would it be limited, I guess is what I'm getting
The
at? For
education-
both courses, actually.
The education course pathway is at Vista because it's the second course in a 3-course pathway. And so we're bringing it on as we need it because they've already had the first year of the course. So next year it starts at Mesa. So then the following year we would grandfather it in. We currently do not have the accelerated bio at other sites. And what we've done is it's a site choice. It's based on the principal's request and what the principals are requesting. And so right now it's going to be offered at Murrieta Valley High School, but not at the other 2 high schools because of scheduling situations, or not situations, but the way the master schedule is created and put together.
And is there accelerated chemistry in all 3 sites? Did that exist, and was that board approved previously? And if so, just kind of curious.
Chemistry was approved last year. It was offered this year, and it's at 2 of our sites, but one of our sites chose not to offer it.
Just out of curiosity, what site did not?
Mesa.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Ground school, is that, will that ever be taught at one of the other schools also?
That is aligned with the JROTC, and it's specific to Air Force. Yes. So no, it's an Air Force course, not for the other sites.
Shucks. Navy flies planes too.
They would create their own course. So because it's a strand, although they're JROTC, each of them, they each have their own curriculum and way that they do things. And so we would create a course for the Naval or for the Marine as well, if that's what they chose.
There's also depending a little bit on the teacher's experience
Yes.
and their credential.
Sure.
That may also play into the decision.
Sure.
Because every school has a different branch of the military in general.
Correct. We have 3 different ROTCs.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to go into the Education One pathway. Mrs. Chesler, who developed the course, invited me into 3 of her different sections and just talk with the kids. And boy, they are awesome. And they're all very excited to go into education. And I know she's developing this sort of as she goes. I think that's why we're sort of piloting and seeing how it goes. As well, I'd like to give a shout out to Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, who developed this ground school course. And he's been working on this for years and been talking to me about it for years. And I'm so proud of him for finally getting it together and doing it and presenting it and being able to have it as a course. And now, Paul, let's just go over and talk with Lieutenant Colonel Jackson and get him on the naval aviator side.
Yeah.
I think he'd be open. He's a super guy and he really loves his kids. And I think summer project for you and me.
Sounds good.
I would love to see
Also-
that as well, being from a naval aviator family. Okay.
Also be interesting to see if at some point down the line, we can begin to offer beginning A&E mechanics, airframe and engine mechanics, because there's a big need for those too, no matter what branch of the service.
You might want to sit down because we've got lots of ideas. Lots, and they'll
Lots of
just keep
ideas.
coming.
Call me in the morning. Yeah. Well, okay. This calls for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. The approval of Murrieta Valley Unified School District General Obligation Bond Project List. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
I have comments.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so in looking at the project list, I found that overall it was pretty generic and open-ended. I noticed the broad categories and, for example, all work necessary and incidental. I saw broad thematic goals, catch-all categories, which ultimately can include anything. Words like modernize, replace, repair, improve. There was no delineation of project by school, function, or chronology, and no detailed breakdown. And then more concerning the wording, which was already, I found to be vague, it concludes with not intended to limit the broader types of projects described and authorized by this measure. So we have a very general list, which doesn't provide any limits at all. So anyway, approving a project list seems premature. Why are we not considering a detailed project list in conjunction with the actual language of the proposed bond and voting on it as a complete proposal? The vast scope of the possible project seems to encompass some things that should be paid for as ongoing operating expenses rather than incurring long-term debt payable over decades. For example, updating computer systems and software, painting, improvements for pools. It seems like those types of things should be handled as recurring operational expenses rather than a capital expense. Also concerning are, well, as I mentioned, the fact that it's not limited by the list. Also, the proposed timing of this bond proposal is silent on various ominous economic burdens faced by Murrieta residents, like highly inflated food, housing, utilities, gasoline, homeowners insurance costs. The state budget crisis in the news right now. Today's Press Enterprise reports on page A7 that Governor Newsom states that he will not raise taxes to address a $44.9 billion budget deficit, but the fine print of his budget contains several indirect tax increases on businesses expected to total $18 billion, all passed on to consumers, of course. Also in today's Press Enterprise, on the same page, we are told our Riverside County supervisors just voted to increase their base pay from $190,783 to a base pay of $226,359, courtesy of Riverside County taxpayers. Supervisor Kevin Jeffries, who voted against the pay raises, points out that taxpayers in this county make probably 60% of what the supervisors voted to pay themselves. I guess a similar income differential likely exists between most Murrieta residents and the administrative salaries paid by paid to the administrators in this district, paid by the taxpayers. Additionally, I believe the Murrieta taxpayers deserve a much higher level of accountability beyond the Oversight Committee and the audits. For example, a highly detailed project list, a schedule of milestones in delivering and completing the projects, defined consequences for things like cost overruns and behind schedule projects. In addition to these financial burdens, Murrieta parents struggle to navigate their children's educational options, noting the erosion of their rights simply to be informed about situations concerning and affecting their own children while at school, with threats emerging from both local government and state government. Just yesterday, California Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala reported that a group of Democratic California lawmakers and State Superintendent Tony Thurmond announced a plan to gut and amend AB 1955, a maneuver which appears to be an effort to buttress AG Rob Bonta's lawsuits against local school districts who dare to pass policies to protect the rights of parents to be notified about critical issues that come to light while their child is at school. Regarding the lawsuits, Assemblyman Chris Ward said, "We didn't want to force the question last August because of AG Bonta's leadership and wanting to side with us and try to tackle this in a potentially more expeditious way. As we're seeing from some of these court conversations, it's clear that we do need statutory guidance about what should or should not be done at the local level." And that's the end of that quote. Seeing that using taxpayer money against taxpayers is not going so well in the courts, the legislature apparently is ready to exert their own kind of force to prevent Murrieta voters from choosing the policies of their own schools. Parents should not be forced to co-parent with the government, not by their local school board, not by bureaucrats in Sacramento, who have other urgent matters that properly demand their attention and remedy. I'm also uncomfortable with the rhetoric of urgency and doom surrounding this proposal. The flyer regarding the imminent opening of one apartment complex, the projected enrollment panic, the threat of having to borrow money at possibly higher interest rates. The apartment and housing developments are in various stages of planning and construction. The children will be coming gradually and interspersed into different grade levels. We don't have to rush to get this onto the November 2024 ballot. It feels like we are rushing this along, and the vagueness of the project list and the complete absence of the proposed bond resolution makes the rush for November 2024, with our vote necessary in less than a month, seem way too premature. We should be hosting several well-promoted community town halls that afford the public opportunities to ask questions. I do not see the feasibility of the current proposed time schedule for the board to vote on this. I see significant economic and social burdens to our community. Perhaps not November 2024, perhaps the next election. And that's
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm going to just chime in. Yeah, AB 1955 is going to hurt our community so badly because it's going to hurt your bond issue. No one's going to want to send it. Not to mention, we have an exodus out of schools to homeschooling and other choices already because of some of the issues that come up, some of the social issues. And as this just keeps ramping up, and I think I said this a year ago, you're threatening the bond issue. Additionally, the state seems so preoccupied with some of these social issues and not funding us the way they should. We're on the losing end of that funding all the time, and no one wants to address that. But you got to understand, there's a whole group of voters out there that are paying very close attention to that, and they vote, and they vote heavily. There's a lot of people in the room that dislike conservatives, but out in the community, they're predominantly conservative, and that means they vote. And once light gets shown on what's going on, and it's going to be shown because of the news and all this other stuff that's going on, you're hurting your own cause. And instead of acting like a community, you're going to end up on the losing end of this. And so I'm just mentioning that because I think there's a lot going on right now, and it does make me nervous about how we're communicating with the community about this list, and I think we should be at least open to making sure that we're fiscally sound in how we do business and not overstaffed and not making this list, if it is too vague, then we need to make sure we tighten it down a little bit. But that's all I really have to say about that. I am concerned about how this is moving forward.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Were there any specific questions you wanted to ask staff? Because Darren might be prepared to answer some of those.
I think that my main thing is, you know, as a family with a rising price of everything, we have to be really aware of our budgets, right? And so I think as a board, we need to just be open to the idea of, man, this could go south in the next 5 months. Even if we all agreed, let's pass this bond as some of the teachers had mentioned. Hey, we really need this, and I totally get it. We really need this. Once more light starts coming in on some of these issues, and they start paying attention and getting really into the weeds about, for example, long-standing consideration that we're overstaffed in most of our departments. That's a lot of, as we mentioned, the payroll. That's a lot of money there. And so there's different ways to fund things. There's different ways of looking at it. You can cut a pie in so many different ways. And I'm just hoping that we pay attention to this and we are prepared for any outcome and really think about how we can tighten our belts the way the community is being asked to tighten their belts. And I think that would be important for us to really consider.
I'd like to say that I have looked over the project list several times, and I feel it's a little vague. It's true, but I'm torn because I know that we need more schools. I know that we need more classrooms. I know that if you ever taught in a portable, I pray for you because who knows what's going to happen when you walk in, whether the floor is going to give away or,
I have.
You have.
I have, yeah.
You have.
It's true.
So there are some things specifically that we really do need, period. I believe that this, before it goes out again, the project list, that we could go through it and be a little more concise in some of the areas. Obviously, I can't predict when a roof's going to go or when a pipe's going to burst and so forth and so on. If I could, I'd make a lot of money. But I do believe that we need to make it a little more concise for the folks so they have a concrete feeling of what it is they're voting for. I've taught for 34 years, and I've never found the vast body of teachers that I've dealt with as being greedy. They pay for a lot of things out of their own pocket. Yeah. I figured up a couple of years ago, I spent roughly $500 to $1,500 a year in my design classes. You just do. Mm-hmm. And I know that other teachers have similar expenses, maybe not that much, maybe more. We're trying to do the best we can as teachers, but at the same time, we want to serve the community because we see the buildings being built. And I want to tell you that looking at the map that was given us by the city, there's hardly any land left that will support schools. It takes at least, for a very small school, 5 acres, but mostly you're talking 20 to 40 and 20 to 45. And I think if we handle this properly, this project list, maybe get it a little more concise, you don't have to, stay up nights to do it, that it will be better understood and accepted by the general community and the parents that we're asking to vote for it.
If I could weigh in, because I think there's merits on all the things that are being said, because I think by design, the project list is vague. However, what we're asking for is a project list to be determined by the board with the types of projects. We have a facility master plan that is kind of our doctrine, and I'll call it our map. What are the projects that we're going to be doing? the vagueness that you speak to allows the district to have flexibility for when things need to be done or have to be done. Mr. Diffley, I'll go back several years back. We really wanted MCA to be built, right? And we had all intentions to do so. We have a plan, we had architectural design, DSA approval. Unfortunately, things out of our control, inflation, the spike, caused us to be able to put that on the back burner because we needed to respond to student housing. We have a large number of kiddos coming over on the west side. So we put the Murrieta Elementary School project in front of that. And so a vagueness to this project list doesn't say that we're not going to do things in the order that the board or the community wants to see. It does give us the flexibility to be able to execute when we're needing to. There's things that happen in the district that are not planned for. For example, an air conditioner going down. We utilize a variety of different funding mechanisms to be able to execute projects. And I agree with Nick on a lot of things when it comes to say, shucks, that's the last thing I want to do is go ask our taxpayers for more money. It's our reality in this state and how schools are repaired. In addition to our ongoing major maintenance program, which funds a lot of our facilities and our preventative maintenance as well as our ongoing maintenance, we utilize CFDs, those Melrose taxes that exist and are going to be falling off in our community soon. We utilize those types of projects. If you look at the classrooms that are being built for the expansion of Lisa J. Mills, we're utilizing a CFD there. It's not bond dollars, it's CFD dollars because of the growing population at that school site. We also have different initiatives in our state that happen to us. Transitional kindergarten. We don't receive any type of facility dollars for that unfunded mandate, but we are required to be able to answer that call. I fully understand. I agree with a lot of the things that are being said. This facility master plan provides that flexibility for us to be able to lean in on what we have to do as a school district. But yet it's broad enough to allow us to be flexible when we're needing to. I know over the years we've had our mind's eye in trying to get portables off campuses, but things have moved in front of it. And so the large capital projects that this district gets to do is there's a lot of thought into what goes into it because we have to be very cautious about these large dollar expenditures. The project over at Murrieta Elementary School was thought to be about $14 million when we executed the plan. By the time we got to executing it, because of inflation, cost of goods and services, labor costs, were about $23 million for that. And those are going to be things I hope don't replicate themselves, but I don't have that crystal ball. And so I think them utilizing the master planning process as we have historically, we are in that process right now. You may recall in February, our master planner was there taking your feedback. They've also taken feedback from superintendent's advisory councils. They've been with the Citizens Oversight Committee. They've taken information from school sites to be able to build these types of items because there are things that need to be done. We want to be able to have ongoing routine maintenance of our items, which ongoing major maintenance funds can work. But when it comes down to replacement of air conditioning systems, we have a cadence of which we do, and we've called upon bond dollars to do those types of items. We are facing growth on the west side primarily. We have over 6,000 units over the next 5 years. So yeah, they are coming over, but it does take time to plan a capital project. The DSA approvals that we have to go through, it requires a lot of detail and a lot of time. And so it takes years to plan a project. We are able to go for a bond every 2 years. It's not annually, it's every 2 years. And like I said, coming to the community for a bond is not something I think we all want to stand up and do. I think it's something that we kind of have to do to take care of our aging facilities in this community. We've had the good fortune to run a school district with over 20,000 students for a long time now. Historically, the growth for the past, I'll say 20 years has been going out to the east. Now on the west, we can see sticks in the ground on the west side of town. and it's causing us to be able to pivot a little bit. We have to be able to make room for independent student growth. Our demographer, we do look at it 10 years out. In that 10 years out, you see some impacted schools that we're not going to be able to accommodate in our current condition. Although we're building new classrooms at Murrieta Elementary School, we're expected to see 1,700, I think, in about 8 or 9 years. Baja Elementary School will be up to 900 soon. We have about 600 there. So there's going to be some facilities. And in this school district, I've been in here for 22 years, and I've always seen this school district to prioritize student seats for students to make sure they're safe. And I think it's testimonial because you get to see the condition and why we still have portables. We haven't been willy-nilly by just going and build something that doesn't get utilized. We use every inch of our campuses. And I've been in other school districts where I know that's not the case. We use every inch of our campuses. We have a unique circumstance that's taking place right now where we see our elementary schools growing and our high schools shrinking. And they're not shrinking by lots, but like I say, I would say they're going to be shrinking to like almost normal size. You know, Vista Murrieta High School will still be over 3,000 kiddos, but there again, we have some opportunity in front of us. The proposal for this bond draft that came to you for your consideration last time was the same one that's in front of you today, because I didn't receive much feedback for change. And so that's the reason why I've brought this back for an action item tonight. And so if there's any specific questions about things that we're going to be doing, understanding we do have processes in place where we can't go out and do large capital items without your approval.
Yeah.
Those things have to come for your approval. You approve when we go to bid. Those bid projects come right to you for approval. And again, I know Dr. Andrus, you know, we talk at length about things that are happening, and of course things that we have to put on the back burner because something else has jumped in front of it. And that's just reality of our school business. We don't have an abundance of dollars to be able to go and build things that we hope for. We usually build things that we need.
Just out of, oh, I'm sorry, you haven't.
Yeah, I haven't talked yet, if you don't mind. I think Mr. Pardue, you and I have agreed that we talk to different people in the community. And I am not hearing the words vague, undefined. The words, I've shared this widely because we've had this. We've had this list for how long? Several weeks now as
yes.
board trustees?
Yeah.
And I have shared this list widely. And the words I hear back are comprehensive, allows for flexibility, all-encompassing. I actually shared it with a very good friend of mine who is a general contractor. He is not associated with this district in any way, works all over LA and San Diego, and said, he said this is like star quality about how to do this and how to have that comprehensive list that allows us to do what we need to do. I'll also remind Mr. Diffley, you know, you and I have sat through many, many, many master planning lists where we prioritize what comes first, and sometimes we have to reprioritize and everything, but that all goes through board approval.
Yeah.
So it's not like Mr. Daniel is going to go out and grab a hammer and start building stuff without our approval. We approve everything. And this type of a list, again, we've had it all this time, and there's been not a single word about what's wrong with it. Mr. Langworthy, I'm going to give you a shout out because you came up tonight with solutions. And I really appreciate that. One of my very first supervisors in our staff meetings, you couldn't complain unless you came with solutions. And I'd really like to hear a lot more solutions around here being offered instead of all of the complaining. It's really getting tiresome.
Well, I would like to say, yes, I agree with you in parts of that. But I also know that there are people who get nervous when you say, here's the list, and it is admittedly vague. I as an educator understand every one of those things, and I know they need to be there. They need to be built. I'd build it tomorrow if we could, but I want to pass the bond issue. And passing the bond issue means the majority of people have to vote for it. And there's a faction, a segment, if you will, and I don't know how many, I can't tell you that, but there's a segment that would like a little more specificity. Not a lot. You don't have to make everything, 27 items and tell me how many doorknobs there are and how many screws go into the, floor plates. But a couple of things at least would help, I think, convince some people who are perhaps on the fence, say, yeah, they really need that. I can understand that because it's specific. I don't say to do the whole list specific, but I'd like to see something there that would talk to the issues and convince that segment of people.
I do have a solution actually, and I've brought this up more than a few times. The list is what it is. My concern that I brought up that had nothing to do with the list really, but my concern is the threat to the bond. You're asking community members to commit to a long-term payment that might not be the best timing, is what I heard from Jack Guerrero. I thought he did a great job talking about some of the concerns there, pretty specific. My concern is our staff needs to be sensitive to the community for them to want to foot the bill on schools. And the reason why high schools are shrinking is because people are losing confidence in what's happening in the classroom with too much activism. And so when I say, hey, we can pass this English book, can we try to tone it down a little bit? That's a solution. Could you come in and act like a partner in the community with everybody? That's a solution. If I say, hey, we're going to have a whole bunch of headlines in the news about how you can tell off a teacher and it's no problem. Thank you, state of California. That's really going to help us recruit more teachers. No, we probably should say, that's a horrible idea. And we should say it loud and clear as a community. But no, we're not going to do that. Every time we talk about anything about parental rights, we got a bunch of sour-faced teachers in the front and a bunch of upset parents in the back. That's not a community. You have to find a way to come together. Otherwise, you're putting everything in jeopardy. That's just the reality. Now, it's not me determining that. It will come up when it comes up. I'm telling you that's a solution. Try to help be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Any other comments?
I'll make a comment.
Good.
Darren, you answered. I was going to ask you to elaborate on why the list needs to be kind of vague, because stuff happens that you don't expect. I had rats run across my feet one day in class, and I was wearing sandals. We had a rat fall through the ceiling. It happened in the office. There was a parent sitting in the principal's office when that happened. So, there is a need for flexibility, which I understand from having worked at a high school for years. And I really think we should let the public decide. Just put it out there and let the public decide. There will be an independent group of people working on that, not us. But and I know some people are concerned about interest rates. What I understand, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but these bonds can be refinanced, and when they're refinanced, the money goes back to the taxpayers. It does not go to the district. Am I correct on that? Okay. Interest rates will probably drop even by the time we get to that point, I think. Anyway, that's all I have.
Okay. No more comments? F7, approval of the Murrieta Valley Unified School District General Obligation Bond Project List. We'll do it person by person. Mrs. Lund?
Yes.
Mr. Pardue?
Yes.
Mrs. Vandergriff?
No.
Mrs. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Diffley, yes. Okay, we have, motion passes. All right, good. Closed session, we have not finished all the business that we have.
I think we did, actually.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you can end the
hooray.
meeting.
Hot dog. I call for a motion to adjourn the Board of Education meeting at 7:28 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and enduring to the end.